Hey there team, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to Worth Your Time, Worth Your Money, an ongoing segment I do here where I have a look at the opening hours of new and upcoming games. And today we're having a look at Monsters Are Coming, Rock'n' Road. So I've ripped through a couple of hours of this and I've quite enjoyed myself with it. You know, like, it's ticking all the boxes. God, that sounds a little bit cynical. Don't get me wrong, I like it, I'm enjoying it. But I will confess there is something kind of cookie cutter, almost tick boxy about conforming with current X fad. In fact, it's funny to see that it's being bundled on Steam with Ball X Pit, whatever you want to call it. And, you know, you could probably meme about holding them side by side and go, that's the same picture, right? They're very similar from the meta layer down to the moment and the scrolling and moving through a level. Like, they're different, and I think Ball Pit's supremely better, not to make it a pissing match. But this is good. It's doing everything it's supposed to. If this is the sort of genre that you live for, that you enjoy, you know, lighter games with a heavy dose of meta progression, then, you know, you're going to be right at home. You should scoop this up immediately. But if you find yourself maybe worn down or burnt out from that genre, I mean, I could appreciate that for sure. It is very in vogue to make these type games. We'll get into it. But, you know, I wouldn't blame you for passing on what is still a great example of this space done well. Anyway, let's stop talking so broadly. What is Monsters Are Coming? You would probably best call it the in vogue form of action idle roguelite, right? Taking a lot of inspiration from things like Vampire Survivors, specifically where, you know, you move your character around and they auto attack. So let's start there. That's one of the core principles. You have your little main character, you move him around the screen and he auto attacks enemies. They drop little gems. You don't necessarily get the level straight away. It has its own twist gimmick in that you have like a city cathedral that's moving along down the screen, right? And you can bring back and deliver goods to it, which includes the XP that drops from enemies. This is also married with like a harvesting mechanic, something that we've kind of seen pioneered in, say, Deep Rock Galactic Survivors, another excellent game, by the way. Check that one out. But where you mine rocks in that, you do that here. You also chop down lumber and that, and you also mine out gold. Those three kind of resources on top of XP. Gold is used for actually buying things at interim shops. Wood has an unusual upgrade XP bar mechanic. Once you fill it up by having X wood delivered back to your home base, it then will level up and give all your turrets an attack bonus, which isn't telegraphed super well. Like, there are things that spawn friendly minions. You know, you can do like a minion build. I know I'm jumping ahead a bit real quickly, but like, with some trial and error, I couldn't figure out if it was actually speeding up their attack rate as an individual dude or their spawn rate, because neither of those seem to even react, at least from a stat line. So once I started, crunching the numbers and trying to min-max a little bit, there wasn't really adequate feedback for it, keeping it probably firmly in that more casual space. Don't overthink it. Just do the run, die when you die, take the meta currency, upgrade the meta progression between missions to make your guy stronger, and then do it again, right? So like a tier below what personally I like about these kind of games. And on meta progression, while we're talking about it, without giving you a huge history lesson, all of these came from a genre called a rogue-like with a K. And the idea of that initially was it was a self-contained, heavily randomized, a bit like a dungeon run. You'll go through a dungeon, you'll start with random gear, and there'll be a random way to navigate through, and you fight through and you make a build and you do the best you can. But the hypothetical is that with the shitty hand that you are dealt from the onset, you could hypothetically win a run. That was the idea. It was self-contained, and then when you die, you just start again. However, the way that people are kind of wired these days, they need that dopamine feedback, drip feed, created the emergence of the rogue-lite genre with a T, lighter, in that as you fight through with your character, you earn meta currencies that can be spent between runs. I feel a bit silly explaining this, but, I might as well. I don't know if I've ever taken the time to really talk about it. It's kind of common knowledge now to a point, but that's the difference if you didn't know. And the problem, if you outsource to the roguelite too much, which I would argue this game does a little bit, you end up with a situation where you can't feasibly beat the game in one run. And that's becoming a genre staple, and it makes me a little sad. And it's extreme here. So you're going to die. The first like X runs, first half dozen to a dozen runs, you're just going to lose because your dude physically can't output enough damage and the in-run mechanics aren't there enough to support scaling to overcome it. Ergo, your job is to just grind runs that are doomed to die, if only to earn the meta progression that will then upgrade between runs. I don't know, your character does 5% more damage or moves 10% faster, or his harvesting speed is 50% more robust or something like that, right? So anyway, a little bit of a quick aside, but it was worth discussing it at least once. See, this game actually really leans on that. Within the game, you just auto-attack, you harvest around, you bring them back to your central cathedral thing that's moving down the map while enemies are chasing it. And, it has its own wrinkle and gimmick that it will get hung up on obstacles in the way and you'll have to harvest them out of the way. And while it's stopped, the enemies are bearing down. So that's unique. I like that. And every time you level up, you get, your stereotypical rogue-lite. Here's 3 things, choose from one, upgrades to your city. And it will be, turrets or things like adjacency synergy. Every turret around this building gets a bonus. There'll be little districts you can make like farms and forests. And if they're all grouped together and adjacent, they'll increase bonuses. And, like making a forest out of these like log tiles, they'll generate that wood currency we were talking about that increases attack speed for all towers at like 1 every 20 seconds or something, but they'll have adjacency bonuses. And so, there is some strategy to it for sure. But again, not to be too cynical and fatigued, but I can't force myself not to feel these ways. But for all the interesting builds that you might find yourself, exploring, because that's the adventure, that's the fun of a new game when you get your hands on it, is trying to not necessarily break the system, but navigate it, learn it, understand the minutiae. But then when you sort of realize how heavy it is outsourcing that rogue-litification, the light bulb will go off where it's like, well, it doesn't really matter what I place anywhere, right? I just slap things down, whatever, and the run will end when the run ends, and maybe I can eke out another 100 meters or something like that, or whatever you want to call the measurement. But, in the scheme of things, it doesn't make a huge difference. But look, like I said, if you can switch that part of your brain off, and I apologize if I turned it on, if you didn't really think that way, but now you see the forest for the trees, sorry. But if you can, trick your dopamine centers into just engaging with it, it is a very polished, very cool little thing. With all the moving parts, you have interim shops between each run. You have like an escalating soundtrack, so it's a very poppy, catchy beat, but each next leg of your run, you stop, you'll do upgrades, you'll go to a shop, you have a breather, and then you go on the next one. It adds a bit more to the symphonic nature of it, new instruments, it builds up. And again, we saw this in Ball Pit, though again, and not to make it a bloody sword-wielding match, Ball Pit did that in pretty much everything much better, and that has that like breakout, bouncing off the wall mechanic. Not to get into that too much, you can check out that video. If you like this and you don't know what Ball Pit's about, go and check that video on my channel as well. They sort of go in the same conversation. Anyway, look, it's perfectly serviceable, which sounds cruel. I enjoyed my time with it. I did. But I do wonder if I'll go back to it. I might play something with a little bit more meat on the bones. So yeah, that's my takeaway. I like it. It's good. It ticks all the boxes. But like I said, there is a cynical part of me that recognizes that it is kind of a little sterile, and it feels like that. When I say it's ticking the boxes, then that might be exactly what their mission statement was. It feels like there's a template here that's been created on a whiteboard as to what Ball Pit did right, or, other things in the genre. You got the meta layer, you got the roguelite layer, trying to balance that, escalating music, certain art style, tick, 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 tick. It's all there. And like I said, if you're not as prudish as I'm hearing myself be as this video goes on, then there's good fun to be had. It is a good game. It's solid. But I've had plenty of people in my comments section and my Discord talking about how they're getting fatigued on this genre, and I feel like maybe I'm just starting to catch up as well. Anyway, it's only like $10 at launch. Check it out yourself. Team Munch is leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.